You know that weird moment when someone you thought you had figured out completely just throws everything you believed about them out the window? Yeah, that happened to me, and honestly, it flipped my whole world upside down. It started with my younger brother. Well, he's technically my younger brother, and it turns out he didn't act like one at all. Not in any way I expected. So let me back up a bit. I'm Jake, 27 years old, living in this cramped but cozy apartment in downtown Chicago. I work in marketing, which basically means I spend half my day staring at a screen pretending to know what all these acronyms mean. My life's the kind you'd expect from someone in his late 20s. Work, gym, the occasional night out with friends, and of course, the usual family drama on the side. But none of that prepared me for what happened with my brother Alex. Alex is 5 years younger, 22 now, and for most of my life, he was just that kid tagging along. The annoying little brother who borrowed my stuff without asking and always had some ridiculous prank up his sleeve. You know the type. But about a year ago, everything started changing. He moved in with me after college. He said he wasn't ready to jump headfirst into the real world, whatever that means. And suddenly, I was seeing a side of him I never expected. It wasn't just that he was more mature or responsible than he ever let on. It was something else entirely. Alex had this confidence about him that I'd never really noticed before. Like, the way he carried himself, the way he talked to people, and even the way he looked at me. It was like he wasn't just my little brother anymore, but someone else entirely. Someone magnetic. I remember the first time I caught myself thinking that. We were sitting on the couch one Friday night, binge watching some random Netflix series, and he was telling this ridiculous story about his job at the coffee shop. Mid-story, he looked over at me, and for a split second, it felt like the air between us shifted. I blinked, and it was gone, but the feeling stuck with me. That night, I tossed and turned, replaying that moment over and over. I kept telling myself it was nothing. He's my brother, after all. But the truth is, it wasn't nothing. Something about him had changed, or maybe I was just finally seeing him for who he really was. And that scared me, because the more I tried to ignore it, the harder it became. The thing is, I never really thought about Alex in that way before. We were just siblings, sometimes close, mostly teasing each other, occasionally fighting, but family. End of story. But now, everything felt different. Like there was this invisible line between us that wasn't supposed to be crossed, and yet, somehow, it was. I'm still not sure when exactly I realized I was falling for him. It wasn't like some dramatic movie moment where the sun sets perfectly in the background and you hear a swell of music. It was small things. The way he laughed at my dumb jokes, the way he'd absent-mindedly rest his hand near mine on the couch, or how he seemed to know exactly what to say when I was feeling down. Little moments that piled up into this overwhelming feeling I couldn't ignore. Living together made it worse, or better, depending on how you look at it. I caught myself looking for excuses to be in the same room, to talk just a little longer than usual, even when I had work to do, or friends waiting to hit the bar. And the worst part, I didn't know if he felt the same way. One night, maybe a couple of months in, things got really weird. We were sitting on the fire escape outside my apartment, smoking cigarettes. Yeah, I know, bad habit, just talking about random stuff. There was this silence that fell between us, not uncomfortable, but heavy, like the air was charged. Then he looked at me and said, "Do you ever feel like people don't really see the real you?" I wanted to tell him that I did, that I thought I was starting to see him now in a way no one else had. But the words got stuck in my throat. Instead, I just nodded, trying to read what was behind those words. Because I was starting to realize that the brother I thought I knew might be hiding something. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted to help him reveal it. That night was a turning point. I don't know what happened next, but I knew my life was about to get a hell of a lot more complicated. And honestly, I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing. But one thing was clear. Alex was no longer just my younger brother. He was something else entirely, and I had no idea how to handle it. After that night on the fire escape, I found myself watching Alex more closely. Not in a creepy way, well, maybe a little, but it was like I was trying to catch glimpses of whatever he was hiding beneath that confident, easygoing exterior. He never really opened up much about his feelings, at least not directly. But sometimes I'd catch a flicker of something in his eyes. a vulnerability that made me want to reach out and just hold him. It might sound ridiculous, but I started to realize that living together broke down some invisible barriers between us. Suddenly, we shared more than just a family connection. Our routines, our late-night talks, even the way we argued over dumb stuff like who ate the last slice of pizza, it all felt charged with this deeper undercurrent. I kept trying to convince myself I was just imagining things, but the feelings were stubborn, persistent in ways I wasn't prepared for. One evening, about 2 weeks after that fire escape conversation, Alex asked me if I wanted to grab dinner at this little taco place a few blocks away. Nothing special, just casual. I agreed, figuring it was a good way to break the monotony of another work-heavy week. We ended up sitting at this small corner table, the kind that feels private even in a busy place. Alex was animated, telling me about a weird customer at work who tried to order a latte with almond milk but didn't know what almond milk was. Typical Alex humor, dry, sarcastic, but with this strange warmth that made me smile without realizing it. After a while, the topic drifted. I asked him what he wanted to do with his life after this whole not ready for the real world phase. He shrugged, took a bite of his taco, and looked down at his hands. "I don't know, man," he said quietly. "Sometimes I feel like I'm just pretending. Like I'm stuck playing a role because that's what everyone expects. But none of it feels real." That hit me hard. I nodded, trying to find the right words. I get that. It's like you're stuck in this between place where you don't know who you're supposed to be. He looked up, eyes locking with mine, and for a moment, the entire restaurant seemed to disappear. Yeah, exactly that. The tension was thick, and I could feel my heartbeat speed up. There was something in his voice, in the way he looked at me, that made me want to reach across the table and just say it. Say what? That I was falling for my own brother? That I wanted to know the real him, the one he was scared to show? I swallowed hard, forcing a laugh. Well, at least you're not alone. I think everyone feels that way sometimes. Maybe, he replied, but there was a sadness in his eyes that I couldn't shake. We finished dinner in a kind of quiet companionship, the easy chatter replaced by something heavier. On the way home, we walked side by side, the city lights casting long shadows on the sidewalk. I felt like I wanted to say more, to tell him I saw him, all of him, but I didn't know how to start. Days passed, and whatever unspoken tension had built between us lingered. We slipped back into our routines, but the way we looked at each other had changed. It was like we were both waiting for one of us to say something, but no one did. Then, one night, everything came to a head. It was late, probably close to midnight, and I was in the kitchen making coffee because I couldn't sleep. Alex came in, rubbing his eyes, and asked if he could join me. I nodded, and we sat at the small table in silence, the hum of the city outside our windows the only sound. After a few minutes, he broke the silence. "Jake, can I tell you something?" His voice was low, hesitant. "Yeah, of course," I said, trying to sound casual, though my heart was pounding. He looked down at his hands, then back up at me. "I've been struggling with who I am, more than you know, and it's been eating me up inside." I reached across the table, covering his hands with mine. "You can tell me anything, Alex. You know that." There was a long pause, then he took a deep breath. "I'm not just your little brother who acts a bit older than he is. I'm different. I'm gay, Jake. And I've been scared to say it out loud, because I didn't know how you'd react, or if you'd still see me the same way." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, but in the best possible way. There was something freeing in his honesty that made me want to hug him forever. "Alex," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "thank you for trusting me with that. It doesn't change a thing. You're still my brother, but more than that, you're you, and I'm here." He smiled, this genuine, relieved smile that made my chest tighten. And then, without thinking, I said something I didn't expect. "I think I've been scared too. Scared of how close we've gotten and what that means." His eyes widened. "What do you mean?" I hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I mean, I don't just feel like your brother anymore. I don't know how to explain it. I think I'm falling for you, Alex." The silence that followed was thick, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of possibilities. He reached out, brushing a stray hair from my forehead. "I was hoping you'd say that. And just like that, everything we'd been holding back, all the confusion and fear, started to make some kind of sense. Because maybe, just maybe, we didn't have to be stuck in the roles everyone expected us to play. Maybe we could write our own story. I don't know what comes next. I don't even know if this is the right path or if it's crazy. But I do know one thing. Alex isn't just my younger brother anymore. He's the person I want to figure it all out with. And for the first time, that feels like enough. Those words hung between us. Heavy, but somehow electric. I could feel the warmth of his hand on my forehead, the way his eyes searched mine, like he was looking for permission, for reassurance that I wasn't going to recoil or run. But I didn't. I just stayed there, heart pounding, mind racing, thinking about how long I'd kept this bottled up, afraid to even admit it to myself. "I was hoping you'd say that," Alex repeated softly, and I swear, in that moment, the world shrunk down to just the two of us, sitting at that tiny kitchen table, late at night, with nothing but the hum of the city and our tangled feelings. I managed a shaky smile. "So, what now?" He shrugged, a little nervous but also relieved. "I guess now we figure it out. I don't want to lose what we have, but I don't want to lie to myself either." I nodded slowly. "Neither do I. But if I'm honest, I had no idea how to figure this out. We lived together, shared the same space, and had all these years of brotherly history that suddenly felt like a different kind of weight. How do you even start navigating that without wrecking everything?" Over the next few days, the air between us was different. Not awkward, but charged. We weren't rushing into anything. In fact, we barely talked about what had happened that night. Instead, we fell into this strange rhythm, full of stolen glances and small touches that lingered just a moment longer than before. One afternoon, I was lounging on the couch, half watching a rerun of some sitcom, when Alex dropped down next to me, close enough that our legs touched. "Hey," he said, voice soft. I looked over, catching the nervous flicker in his eyes. "Hey." He hesitated. "Can I tell you something else? Something I've never told anyone?" "Of course." He bit his lip, then said, "I've been thinking about us a lot. About what you said. And I think I wanted to try this. To see where it goes." My stomach flipped. "Me too." He smiled, this shy, hopeful smile that made my heart ache. "But I'm scared." "Same here." And just like that, it felt like we were standing on the edge of something unknown, both terrified and excited. Over the following weeks, we started testing the waters. Not with some grand declaration or dramatic confession, but with little things. Sharing late-night snacks, sitting closer on the couch, the occasional casual touch like brushing hands or a quick hug that lingered. It was awkward, sometimes confusing, but also thrilling in ways I never expected. One night, after a few drinks, we ended up back on the fire escape, the same spot where I first saw that flicker of something different in him. The city sprawled around us, lights twinkling like stars, and the air was cool but electric. Alex leaned back against the railing, eyes fixed on the skyline. "I never thought this would happen," he said quietly. "Me neither," I admitted. He looked over at me, and I could see the honesty there, plain and raw. "I was afraid I'd lose you. Our family. Everything." "You won't," I said firmly. "I don't want to lose you. Not like this." He smiled, a little softer this time. "Good, because I'm not sure what I want exactly, but I know I want you." There was a pause, then I reached out, brushing my fingers against his cheek. His skin was warm, and he leaned into the touch like he'd been waiting for it. "Alex," I whispered, "this is new for me, for us. But if you're willing to try, so am I." He nodded, eyes shining in the moonlight. "I'm willing." From there, things moved slowly. Too slowly for both of us sometimes. We talked a lot, trying to figure out boundaries, what felt right, what didn't. It wasn't always smooth. There were moments of doubt and frustration, especially when old habits crept in, or when we caught ourselves slipping back into brother mode. One afternoon, I came home early from work to find Alex sitting on the couch, looking lost in thought. I sat down beside him, careful not to crowd him. "Hey," I said. He looked up, surprised. "Hey, I just wanted to check in. How are you feeling about all this?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Honestly, confused. Sometimes I feel like I'm betraying what we were. Other times I feel like this is exactly who I'm supposed to be." I nodded. "I get that. Every day feels like a new challenge." We sat there in silence for a moment, then he reached out and took my hand. "I guess what I'm trying to say is, thanks for sticking with me, even when it's messy." I squeezed his hand. "Always. You're not in this alone." That night, as we got ready for bed, I caught myself glancing at him differently. Not as my brother, not as my roommate, but as someone I wanted to hold close in a way I never had before. As I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I realized that whatever this was, however complicated or uncertain, it was real. And maybe that was enough to start with. The hardest part, though, was still ahead, telling the rest of the world who Alex really was and who we were becoming. But for now, in our little apartment in Chicago, with the city light shining through the window, I was willing to take it one day at a time. Because sometimes the most unexpected love stories are the ones worth fighting for. The days that followed felt like walking a tightrope between the old life and the new one we were trying to build. Every glance, every touch carried the weight of unspoken questions. How far do we go? What does this even mean? And the biggest, scariest one, what happens if someone finds out? I knew what society said about this kind of thing. Hell, I'd heard the jokes and the whispered warnings growing up. But this wasn't some abstract controversy for me anymore. This was Alex, the same guy who used to steal my clothes and beat me at video games, now sharing his fears and hopes with me in ways I never imagined. And I was falling deeper into a mess of feelings I didn't have the words for. We tried to keep things private, at least for ourselves, because the idea of telling our parents or friends felt like opening a Pandora's box. Family dinners became a minefield. The casual way our parents would talk about Alex as my baby brother suddenly felt loaded with painful irony. How could I tell Mom that her baby boy was someone I was in love with? How do you even start that conversation? One evening, after a particularly awkward family Skype call where my dad asked when Alex was going to, quote, settle down, we sat in the living room, both a little raw. "I don't think I can keep pretending," Alex said quietly, staring at his coffee mug like it held all the answers. "Neither can I admitted. He looked up, eyes bright. "Then what do we do?" I shrugged, though inside I was anything but calm. "I don't know, but maybe it's time we stop hiding. For our own sake." The next week, we started small, telling a few close friends we trusted. To my surprise, most of them were supportive, or at least accepting. I think part of me expected judgment, but instead, I found relief in speaking the truth. Alex was a little more hesitant, but the way his face lit up when someone accepted him for who he was made it clear it was worth it. Then came the hardest conversation, with our parents. We agreed to tell them together, on a weekend when we were all home for once. The night before, I barely slept, running scenarios through my head, trying to prepare for whatever reaction might come. When the moment finally came, we sat down in the living room, my mom knitting nervously and my dad reading the paper like he was trying to avoid eye contact. Alex went first, voice steady but vulnerable. "Mom, Dad, there's something I need to tell you. Jake and I, we're more than just brothers." The silence that followed was deafening. My dad lowered his paper, eyes narrowing. Mom's hands trembled as she set down her knitting. "What do you mean?" Dad asked, voice tight. "We're in love," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "It's complicated, I know, but it's real." Mom let out a shaky breath. I don't know what to say." Dad stood up abruptly. "This isn't right. It's not natural." The words stung like a slap, but I didn't back down. "I'm sorry you feel that way, but Alex is my brother, and he's the person I care about most. I want you to accept that." The next hour was rough. Tears, raised voices, and a lot of confusion. But as painful as it was, it felt like the beginning of something honest. By the end, Mom hugged Alex tightly, whispering that it would take time to understand. But she loved him no matter what. Dad? Well, he left the room, and we haven't really talked about it since. After that, things between Alex and me shifted again. The weight of secrecy lifted, replaced by a fragile hope. We started planning little dates, coffee shops, walks in the park, even a movie night where we held hands without feeling the need to hide it. One night, we were lying in bed, the city skyline glowing outside the window. Alex turned to me, his face serious. Jake, do you think we can really do this? Be more than brothers without losing everything? I reached out, brushing his hair back from his forehead. I don't know, but I do know I want to try. I want to see where this goes, even if it's messy or scary. He smiled, that same shy, hopeful smile from before. Me too. And that's where we are now, trying to navigate a world that didn't prepare us for this kind of love, learning to balance the past and the present, and hoping that, in the end, love is enough. I can't promise this story has a happy ending yet, but if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the people who matter most aren't defined by labels or expectations. They're the ones who stick by you when everything else feels uncertain. And right now, that's Alex. So yeah, he was my younger brother. But he's also so much more. And somehow, that feels like the most real thing in my life. The days after telling Mom and Dad were a weird mix of relief and tension. Mom was warm and tried to be understanding, though you could tell she was still processing everything. Dad, on the other hand, acted like it was a conversation that never happened, avoiding us, keeping distant, and leaving the room whenever we brought it up. It pleased me, but it also forced Alex and me closer in a way that felt both comforting and terrifying. One evening, a week or so after the family reveal, Alex and I were sitting on the couch, watching some mindless sitcom neither of us was really paying attention to. The silence between us was comfortable, the kind you only get when you've been through too much together to need constant chatter. He glanced over at me. You think Dad will ever come around? I shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe not. But I don't think that changes anything between us. He nodded slowly. Yeah. I just hate the idea of losing him, or losing this, he said, gesturing vaguely between us. Me too, I admitted. But I've been thinking, maybe we don't have to choose. Maybe we can figure out how to have both, even if it's messy. He smiled, that small, shy smile that always made my chest tighten. You're really good at saying what I'm too scared to say. I laughed softly. Someone has to. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized I was starting to see a future I hadn't even dared imagine a few months ago. It wouldn't be perfect, probably anything but it could be ours. The next day, I told Alex I wanted to take a trip together. Just the two of us. Somewhere to escape the noise and figure things out without distractions. He looked surprised but excited, and before we knew it, we were booking a weekend getaway to a small cabin upstate. The drive was quiet at first, both of us lost in our own thoughts, but as the miles slipped by, conversation started to flow. We talked about everything, our fears, hopes, and the weird, unexpected path our relationship had taken. When we arrived, the cabin was perfect, cozy, tucked away in the woods, with a big window that looked out over a lake shimmering in the afternoon sun. We spent the day hiking, cooking simple meals, and just being together without the usual pressure. One evening, after dinner, we sat by the fire pit outside, wrapped in blankets as the night settled in. The stars were bright, and the air was crisp and clean, a stark contrast to the noise of the city and the chaos in our minds. Alex looked at me, his expression serious but calm. Jake, I'm really glad we did this. Me too, I said. Feels like we can actually breathe here. He laughed softly. Yeah, no judgment. No expectations. Just us. There was a pause, and then he reached out, taking my hand in his. His fingers were warm, and I felt this surge of emotion I couldn't quite put into words. I've been thinking a lot about us, he said quietly. About what it means to be brothers, and more. About the future. I squeezed his hand. What have you figured out? He hesitated, then smiled. That I want to be honest, with myself with you, and with everyone else. I don't want to hide anymore. Neither do I. That night, lying side by side in the cabin, we let down all the walls we'd built around ourselves. There were moments of vulnerability, laughter, and yeah, some awkwardness too, but it all felt real. On the drive back, we talked about coming out more openly, at work, with friends, even with Dad when we felt ready. It was scary, but we knew we didn't want to hide forever. Back in Chicago, the world felt a little different. We were still the same people, but the truth between us made everything clearer. There were still challenges, awkward family dinners, the occasional sideways glance from coworkers, and the ever-present fear of what could go wrong. But there was also hope. And love. One night, a few weeks after we got back, we were in the kitchen making breakfast, the morning sun filtering through the blinds. Alex looked over at me, eyes bright. "Jake, do you ever think about how weird this all is? How we went from annoying siblings to this?" I smiled, flipping a pancake. "All the time. But honestly, I wouldn't change a thing." He laughed. A genuine, easy laugh that made my heart skip. Me neither. As we sat down to eat, side by side, I realized something important. Life might be messy, complicated, and full of unexpected twists, but with Alex, it felt like I was finally home. No matter what the world said, no matter the risks or the judgments, this was our story. And I was ready to write every chapter with him. Months passed, and with each one, Alex and I grew more comfortable in this new version of our relationship, one that defied labels and expectations, but felt authentic and true. We found our rhythm balancing the brotherhood we'd always shared with the deeper connection we were building. It wasn't always easy. There were doubts, missteps, and moments when the past pressed in hard. But there was also laughter, quiet understanding, and a kind of peace I hadn't known was possible. One chilly evening, we found ourselves back on that fire escape, the place where so much of our story had quietly started. The city buzzed beneath us, lights flickering like distant stars. Alex leaned against the railing, his breath visible in the cold air. "You know," he said, nudging my shoulder, "I never thought we'd get here. But I'm glad we did." "Me too," I replied, looking at him, the guy who was my brother, my confidant, and now so much more. "It's been a crazy ride." He smiled softly, reaching for my hand. "I don't want to pretend anymore. Not about how I feel, not about us." I squeezed his hand back, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath the warmth of his skin. "Neither do I." We lingered there, letting the quiet stretch between us, full but unspoken. And then, almost gently, Alex moved closer and kissed me, a simple, honest kiss that carried all the years of confusion, fear, and hope between us. It wasn't some grand declaration or dramatic moment. It was just us, finally allowing ourselves to be seen. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine and whispered, "Whatever comes next, we face it together." I nodded, smiling. Together. Later, as we headed back inside, I thought about everything we'd been through, the secrets, the doubts, the small victories. Life wasn't perfect, and maybe it never would be, but with Alex, I'd found something rare, a love that was messy, complicated, but real. A love that didn't erase our past, but grew from it. And honestly, that was more than enough.